When I was born, it has been, my mother has said that as soon as she left the hospital, that she noticed that I refused to be held. And there has been documentation in my medical records that my autism was evident at 2 years old. But from what my mother has told me, it was evident very shortly after birth. And it was that I refused to be held. It was like I was like holding a sack of potatoes that just was limp and wouldn't respond. And as I got older, when I was supposed to walk and talk, I was a little slow. I was a little slow to walk and a little slow to talk. And when I was still in the crib, I used to oftentimes bang my head against the crib, kind of, well, not exactly bang it, but kind of rock like this, and my head would just sort of bump up against the crib, and I'd do it for hours, up to an hour, maybe more than that, more like hours, a couple hours. And my sister Karen said that I rocked the crib from one end of the room all the way over to the other from banging my head. And then when I started talking, there was, they started noticing problems with my speech. That if I talked, if I wanted something, I couldn't distinguish between I want something or you want something. I couldn't distinguish between you or I. And like if somebody asked me, do you want a glass of water? And if I wanted it, I would repeat exactly what they said. You want a glass of water. And they call that echolalia because I merely echo what the other person says. I never felt that I liked myself for what I was or who I was. I always wanted to be an animal. And I remember I was walking around with a friend in the neighborhood when I was in Kalispell, like I was an animal on a leash. And my friend would drop candy on the ground and I'd eat it up, lap it up like an animal. I wanted to pretend that I was an animal because I never liked being a person, and I didn't like the way people looked. I didn't like the way I looked. I had a real tough time accepting that. And I remember when my father was reaching out to me when I was in the crib, he was giving me peanuts, but he was talking baby talk to me, but even though he was trying to show love, I didn't feel that I could emotionally respond to it. And I had other behavioral problems as I got older, as well as some mild learning disabilities. I had difficulty telling time. I couldn't read a clock. It was very hard for me, and my mother would get frustrated trying to teach me how to tell time. And in my family, I felt that the atmosphere in the house when I was growing up was very cold and distant. I was also interested in guinea pigs, and I was aware of what that meant to me. When I was little, we had several pets, guinea pigs as pets, and I would develop a fantasy of these guinea pigs where they would sleep in a nest in this house, and in that nest, that bed, there'd be two guinea pigs that would sleep side by side. I saw myself as one of the guinea pigs, and then I saw a neighbor friend of mine as the other guinea pig, who was about my age. She was 1 year younger. These guinea pigs would clean each other's ears, and that was one favorite thing that I had, because my mother used to always clean my ears and my brother's ears, and that was one of the most pleasurable physical contact that I've ever had with my mother, and I just feel relaxed just even talking about it. And that's what those guinea pigs would oftentimes do, is clean each other's ears, and it was like bringing me back to when I was an infant and the nurturing that I wanted to feel. My interest changed from the guinea pigs to Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I drew a picture depicting the fantasy of me and my friend Buffy. And I would be a guinea pig, she would be a guinea pig, we'd be in a boat, and we'd be floating in the water. And then all of a sudden something would happen, and then poof, I'd turn into a great big Tyrannosaurus Rex like that, with tan skin. Not green, but tan at that time. And then that marked a new phase in my drawings, where I did lots of pictures of Tyrannosaurus Rex, and my drawings got very violent. And I would draw pictures of him always in chains and being whipped and beaten and attacked by animals. And the guinea pig Buffy was in the picture with her friends attacking me as the dinosaur. And I would be chained, and I couldn't fight back, and I had to just stand there and take it. And there was one scene, how me and Buffy would be guinea pigs prior to all this. Before I got into the dinosaurs, we would clean each other's ears with Q-tips, and it was all real pleasantry, very pleasurable. But then with this Tyrannosaurus Rex, he was chained up. Actually, she, because it was a female, was chained up and was attacked. And one of Buffy's guinea pig friends would start sticking a coat hanger in my ear and plunging it up and down instead of cleaning it with the Q-tips. His waters living as they flow, in liquid voice the water calls, on thirsty knees a pilgrim falls. There is a road inside of you, inside of me there is one too. No stumbling pilgrim in the dark, the road to Zion's in your heart. The road to Zion's in your heart. I started playing the piano when I was about 10 years old, and that was about the same time I started playing the harmonica and the guitar. And a friend of mine, well, actually we didn't have a piano, so I would go to the neighbors' houses to play the piano. And there was about 3 different neighbors that I've had when I was about 10 years old that had a piano, and I was just getting a little bit better and a little bit better. And then I had another neighbor that moved in who taught me how to play, how to read music. When I was about 12 years old, and one of the first songs he taught me was The Entertainer, and I can only play just a little bit of it. I can't play that very well now. And I learned how to read Scott Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag by myself from what Jim taught me. But there was a part of actually no, he taught me how to play that by ear. And then I finished, there's one last section I learned how to play by reading the music. And the guitar, I learned how to play the guitar when I was a kid because, well, you know, I just wanted to express myself. And my neighbor had a guitar that she broke and she threw in the garbage. So I fetched it out of the garbage and I patched it up, glued it together with Elmer's glue, and I restrung it and tuned it up, and I learned how to play the guitar. And I don't know where I got my first harmonica, but I started playing the harmonica about that same time. And I learned rhythm by beating on garbage cans and ice cream buckets in the backyard, banging on garbage can lids and ice cream buckets for drums. Drove the neighbors nuts. But I learned rhythm that way. And I'm about 31 years old, going on 32, so I guess I must have been playing music for about 22 years now. Jesus, amen. I'm looking for. Can you tell me where he's gone? Go down amongst the flower yard, and perhaps so you may find him there. No more, my Lord, no more, my Lord. Lord, I'll never turn back no more. I started out when I was about 10 years old. I always loved making masks. And through the years, I always had built costumes for Halloween. I always wanted to make it by Halloween. And I wanted to add special effects to them through the years, where I would make the eyes move and light up and make the mouth open and close. And usually by the time Halloween rolled around, it never turned out quite right, but it was through years and years of trial and error that I finally got a lot better at it, and I spent more time through the years on my last costume, and it has been my best achievement so far. I was able to make the eyes move and the eyelids blink and the eyes to light up, and I put a speaker in the back of the throat so I could make it roar. And it turned out to be a really good costume, and how I do this is I make it out of foam rubber that I glued together with contact cement, and then I carve it with a knife, get the basic structure, you know, the basic shape using a sharpened kitchen knife, and then I whittle with a pair of scissors to get the more fine-tuned look. I just start trimming like this, and I do it all over, and that's where you can see where the detail here comes from, and here, and everything. And I work at it, and it takes a long, long, long time to do. And once that's done, once I get the detail and the contours that I like, then what I do is I glue nylon pantyhose material over this, and it'll stretch to fit the contour. And then I paint it with liquid latex that I purchased from a theatrical supply company that I order from back east. Okay, these teeth are made out of polyester resin that have been mixed with paint to give it the color that they need. And I'll show you the detail. I take the teeth and then I glue them to the skull piece. I attach them. I get the right color and I paint the whole thing with latex rubber, and sometimes I have to do several coats, and it comes out very realistic.
Crying, Lord, Lord, I wonder will I ever get back home? Crying, Lord, Lord, I wonder will I ever get back home? Ooh, Lord, Lord, I said now, Lord, Lord, I wonder will I ever get back home? Crying, Mama, 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 crying, Ken hate's killing me. Crying, Mama, 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 crying, Ken hate's killing me. Lord, Lord, I said, crying, can't eat Mama, sensual's killing me.
When I was about 12 years old, I was just into my dinosaurs and stuff. I had a neighbor who lived across the street who came from New Jersey, and he had a degree in psychology, philosophy, and music. He had graduated from the Juilliard School of Music, and he also had a degree in politics, and he was one of the best friends that I've ever had. When I first met him, when we were talking, I remember I was asking him about porcelain, if that would be good to use to make teeth, because at that time I was trying to find the right materials to make the masks. And Jim and I were talking about that, and he was planting trees, and I wasn't really interested in him at the time, but boy, I'll tell you, shortly that relationship just blossomed, and he taught me songs on the piano, and he got me to read books. He basically educated me, and he was such a good friend. And I learned so much, and I wonder what I would ever have done without Jim. And he taught me how to think very deeply and even question religion, because I was brought up as a Catholic, as a strict Catholic. And it was a good thing that he taught me how to question, because it frees up my thinking. And then several years later, my sister Patty converted me, because at that point I was an agnostic. I didn't really believe in God. But my sister Patty got me to get back into religion. So I went back into religion. I had, again, developed a faith in God because of Patty encouraging me to, and that combined with being objective and philosophical and analytical helped me to see things at a much broader perspective, not in a narrow religious perspective or even a narrow spiritual perspective when you get too intellectual. But when you put the intellectual with the spiritual, your thinking expands beyond belief, and it is really, really neat. Jim has taught me so much. He's just been a really wonderful friend. And my aunt and I have been very good friends too during this time. And in my family there's been a lot of problems. I've had a history of mental illness. My brother had committed suicide because of depression, and then I had two sisters that were frequently hospitalized for severe mental illness. And I wondered why I have all these problems in my family, and maybe there are some things that I may never fully understand about the causes of this. It's very difficult to deal with mental illness unless you have a very deep faith in God.
Mary wore 3 links of chain, and every link was Jesus' name. Keep your hand on the plow, we'll hold on. Hold on, hold on. Keep your hand on the plow, we'll hold on. Paul and Silas